Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me today, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
I put a spell on you, Trevor, and now you're mine.
Great. I hope you watched the right one and not that one.
I did right. Don't worry, I watched the right one. It's okay.
Okay.
We'll get into it later, but like that is the fact that I didn't use a song that they use in this film is telling.
Fair. And Logan Wilkinson. How you doing, Logan?
I'm doing good. We're in my favorite stretch of the year for D plus content here. We're just everything holiday themed for this month, for December, and then kind of the potpourri month of we have to do everything else in November before the end of the year kind of thing. It's a fun time for the show.
Yes. Today
this is a busy time for the site in general.
Yeah. Today is going to be all about Hocus Pocus 2 as we are kicking off our Halloween month here on That D Plus Show. Apologies for the late delay on this episode. As I tweeted out, Logan's not his power, as I tweeted out, but his internet was down last night when we were set to record, so we had to basically push it a day. But so Hocus Pocus is this week. Werewolf by Night will be discussed next week.
So excited for that.
I watched it last night. I'm very excited to talk about it.
Okay.
Following that, we will continue our Halloween Town run that we've done the last couple of years with Halloween Town High. And then we will wrap up the month of October with Treehouse of Horror episodes 4, 5, and 6 of The Simpsons. Continuing
so excited.
1 through 3 that we did last year. Hocus Pocus 2. Why do we pick it? Because it is Halloween 2022, and this came out last Friday, and so it was like, all right, it'll come out on September 30th. It'll be our first week of that D Plus show in October. A little bit of the history lesson here. First, actually, I want to give a refresher on the original Hocus Pocus, which was originally released back in July 16th, 1993. Again, weird that a Halloween movie came out in July that year, as I think we touched on.
90s were a different time, man.
Yeah.
All blockbusters had to be released in the summer back then. Man.
Well,
that was the rule.
Well, what it was is we talked about it the last time. Nightmare Before Christmas was like the real one that they ended up pushing as like their Halloween movie that year, but they had this also in production and in the slate, and so they're like, all right, let's just throw it out in July. Sure, why not? Other releases of that era were Rookie of the Year, Weekend at Bernie's 2, Free Willy, Coneheads, and Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Hell yeah.
All but one of those is a total and absolute banger.
I'll
give you a hint. Weekend at Bernie's 2 was not
the banger.
Just not.
I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with Weekends at Bernie's 2. Hocus Pocus 2 here, originally released, as we said, September 30th, 2022, with a runtime of 1 hour and 47 minutes. In the Disney live-action timeline of things, we had Chippendale Rescue Rangers, came out earlier this year, May 20th, 2022, followed by Hollywood Stargirl as a Disney Plus kind of exclusive thing. Rise came in June 24th. Pinocchio, which we might have to talk about at some point because that was definitely a thing. September 8th. Here we have Hocus Pocus 2, here September 30th. Up next, we have nothing until Disenchanted coming November 24th, which is certainly one that I am looking forward to as well. Then Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Roderick Rules coming December 2nd. And coming next year, I believe the next one that is like the next live action on the big screen, because I'm pretty sure this isn't coming to just Disney Plus, but it is the live action of The Little Mermaid, May 26th, 2023.
Very excited for that.
Yeah. Our roll call here. The director is Anne Fletcher. She's previously directed films such as 27 Dresses, The Proposal, as well as episodes of This Is Us. And I just thought this was a really cool thing as I was digging into her IMDb. She's a dancer and choreographer going all the way back to projects like The Flintstones. She also worked on The Mask, Casper, Boogie Nights, Anastasia, She's All That, Bring It On, The 40-Year-Old Version, and Step Up and Hairspray. In either a dancer or choreographer capacity. The writers here, we have Jen D'Angelo, who's credited with the screenplay as well as a story by credit. She previously worked on the Too Good to Be True episode of Cougar Town, which I included in here because I know Logan is a Cougar Town fan. She also wrote for Workaholics, Happy Together, and the Young Rock series. David Kirshner is credited with the story by as well as based on characters created by from the original. As we discussed back with the original Hocus Pocus, he was also the person behind An American Tail and American Tail 5 Goes West and The Page Master. And then just
Shout
also
out.
in a weird thing, he's also a producer on all the Child's Play films. So, really way more into the darkness of the horror, I think, on that side of things.
Shout out to David Kirshner, man. First off, American Tail and American Tail 5 Goes West, absolute bangers, absolute classics. However, an underrated sleeper banger is The Page Master with Macaulay Culkin and
I don't remember who else is in that one. I don't think I've ever seen it, really. I remember it coming out. I remember it being a big thing.
He's Doctor. The Doc. He's Doc from Back.
Christopher Lloyd.
Christopher Lloyd. Yeah. Thank you.
Somehow that is actually who I did have in mind to fill in your blank, but I was like, I don't know Page Master. I don't want to jump out on a limb on that one, but yeah, there we go.
Page Master is just a absolute, like I said, sleeper banger of a film. Tremendous film.
All I remember is the Macaulay Culkin aspect, and then that it's there are basically 3 books that are animated books that were
there's
big name comedians
Fairy Tale,
of the time kind of thing.
Yeah, Fairy Godmother, Swashbuckling Adventure, and then kind
horror?
of like a brain dead Frankenstein horror book.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember those
the best and
visuals, but yeah.
The best and scariest moment of that film is when he goes into Moby Dick, and it's the Captain Ahab soloing Moby Dick moment, and it's absolutely wild and scary and creepy, and it's great.
All right.
Gosh, that's such a good movie. Like I said, that's a sleeper bang for people who haven't seen it yet. It's good.
Also here in the writing credits, Blake Harris also has a story by credit, having worked on The Little Mermaid and Anastasia, but not the ones you think. The Little Mermaid was a 2018 version of The Little Mermaid, no affiliation with Disney. And then Anastasia was a 2020 version of the Anastasia story. So, I saw all these well-known names in his credits, and I was like, that's weird. And then looking at any of them, I was like, none of these are all the
off-brand.
They're not the off-brand, but the hey, it's public domain, so we can tell these stories and just cash in on the name that you think this is and sell it to Netflix or something like that. So, but lastly, we also have, as per the original Hocus Pocus, Mick Garris is credited with based on characters created by, because he had helped work on the original Hocus Pocus. His other credits include Critters 2, The Fly 2, and Masters of Horror, the TV series. Our starring, I've broken this out into our returning cohort as well as our newbies. For our returning cohort, of course, we have the Sanderson sisters, Bette Midler as Winifred. She's best known for her Broadway roles like Fiddler and Tommy back in the 60s and 70s, The Rose, Oliver and Company, and then First Wives Club, her work on that. Sarah Jessica Parker as Sarah was in Footloose, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, Flight of the Navigator, also the First Wives Club, and of course, all the Sex and the City stuff. Kathy Najimy as Mary, known from Sister Act and Sister Act 2, Veronica's Closet, Wally, probably best known as Peggy Hill from King of the Hill. I was just going to say, she is I think a lot of people think, she's the
the least like well-known one, but if you actually look at her like her voice credits over the years, like she is by far like she has had the most work out of all three sisters.
Oh, yeah.
And on top of that, she is just like she is an astounding voice actress, like beyond reproach. She's incredible. I love her. The Sanderson sisters overall, I'm least hot on Sarah Jessica Parker, but for Kathy and Bet, I'm just super into both of them. Also, shout out to the First Wives Club, super underrated film, extremely good.
All right. And then lastly, shout out to them bringing back Doug Jones as Billy Butcherson. We talked about him last time around, and we're like, wow, it's really crazy that guy was the guy that went on to be like the creature horror guy in so many things, most notably a lot of Guillermo del Toro stuff, including Pan's Labyrinth and Hellboy 2 and The Shape of Water. And now he's also just like a regular actor guy on Star Trek Discovery. So really cool that they brought him back for this and just gave him a little bit more to do this time around, while still leaning into, I think, what made him so memorable of the first time around as well. In our new cohort of people, we have Whitney Peak as Becca. She was in Molly's Game. She's also in the series Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Home Before Dark, and the Gossip Girl remake. I don't know what
revival.
I think it's a continuation of the original Gossip Girl.
It is a new Gossip Girl. We have Belissa Escobedo as Izzy. She's in The Baker and the Beauty, as well as American Horror Story, and she will be in the upcoming Blue Beetle film, assuming that doesn't get destroyed by Warner Brothers.
Right.
Lilia Buckingham as Cassie. She's in Chicken Girls, Dirt, Total Eclipse, and Crown Lake. I assume all of those are Nickelodeon movies or Disney type things. I don't know. Froy Gutierrez playing Mike. He was in the recent Teen Wolf remake series, as well as Light as a Feather, Initiation, and Cruel Summer. Sam Richardson as Gilbert. Previously been in stuff like Veep, The Detroiters, Werewolves Within, The Tomorrow War. I first recognized him and saw him in a couple episodes of Ted Lasso, and he was also in the After Party series. Tony Hale.
Sam Richardson's fantastic. I love him.
Yeah, he's great. Tony Hale playing the mayor as well as the Reverend Trask character. Of course, best known from Arrested Development as well as Veep. He was Forky in the Toy Story stuff, starting with Toy Story 4. And he can be currently heard in the Harley Quinn series. And lastly, I pulled in Hannah Waddingham as the Witch Mother. She's best known now to audiences
cameo
from Ted Lasso, but she's also, of course, the Shame Woman, or most probably recognizable as the meme saying shame, shame, shame from Game of Thrones. But she's also in series like Krypton and Sex Education before Ted Lasso really has shot her to superstardom. She also has
she popped, because I had no idea she was in the movie, but she popped up. I was like, Ted Lasso. I just started screaming Ted Lasso. Absolutely crazy. I couldn't. Yeah, it was such. And it's also the fact that like she's not in it again. It's just a weird like one-off cameo, which is like, all right, that was awesome. And then they do nothing with it really. But yeah, great for her.
Well, I think they tie into like.
We'll get into it.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah. Some trivia here. There's a fun little mix of like throwback trivia. In the original film, we talked about brother and sister Gary and Penny Marshall playing the husband and wife character, with the husband being dressed as Satan, and the wife just being in a wife attire with like rollers in her hair and stuff. In Hocus Pocus 2, a couple is seen watching that scene from the first movie, meaning that the movie Hocus Pocus is canon within the Hocus Pocus universe.
I'm so glad you shouted this out. I watched this movie twice, and when I like the first time I was like, what the fuck? And then I watched it again tonight, and I'm still just like, yeah, what the fuck? Like, what a weird, like, universe breaking thing they just do so casually and then just, like, go on. It's just like, what a weird moment.
Yeah. Additionally, kind of tying into that cameo, the couple that the mayor asks to hold his place in line are wearing those same costumes. Like the husband is dressed as the devil, and the wife is dressed with like the rollers in her hairs and the nightgown and stuff like that. So they had like a double double homage to that cameo / honoring of Gary and Penny Marshall. When we discussed the original movie, we noted that a sequel directed by Adam Shankman was in development at Disney Plus with a screenplay written by Jen D'Angelo. Ultimately, Adam Shankman was replaced by director Ann Fletcher, as we touched on, but he is still credited as an executive producer, and Jen D'Angelo still is still one of the credited writers. So it was from like a year or 2 years ago. I don't remember when we did Hocus Pocus, but there we go. On Michael Rosenbaum's Inside of You podcast, Doug Jones mentioned that the wig he wears as Billy Butcherson was the same he wore from the first movie.
Gross.
Indeed. Thora Birch was asked to reprise her role as Danny, but had to decline due to scheduling conflicts. Quote, I was working on something else when they were filming. Otherwise, I was definitely going to be there on set with the girls. I can't wait to see what they do with it. I know they're taking a completely different, fresh approach, so I'm excited, Birch said of the project. Bette Midler is largely responsible for Hocus Pocus 2 becoming a reality. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Bette stated that when she started to realize how popular the original film had become, she quote, was surprised and, quote, started making calls. After going online, she stated, quote, I'd never seen so much Hocus Pocus merch. She says she realized something was going on. Quote, as I watched it progress, I'd call the studio once a year to ask, how about it?
So, that's the most Bette Midler sentence I think I've ever read.
There you go.
So good.
In the original film, Mary's mouth is crooked to the right, but this time it is to the left. Kathy Najimy
bugged me, actually.
Has explained
that bugged me a little bit.
This is because it's hard for her to do on the original side now. So to explain it away, Winifred slaps Mary and her mouth moves to the other side. So deal with it, Cameron.
That's fine. I accept it. That's fine.
You would rather she had suffered just for your entertainment.
Not at all. This has been explained to me now. I didn't realize about the slap had made the change on that, so I missed that. That's on me.
There you go.
It's totally cool.
In the Cursed Flash Mob, many dancers can be seen wearing costumes as homages to the first movie, including a Billy Butcherson costume, Mrs. Dennison's Madonna costume, Danny's witch costume, the Sanderson sisters, of course, and the band featured in the I Put a Spell on You number, all getting
the skeleton dudes,
little homages. Yep. When Winifred casts the Magica Maxima spell, her eyes glow purple. In the beginning of the movie, the Mother Witch's eyes are also glowing the same color, hinting that she had also cast the spell herself. Which may be what you guys were going to allude to, so we'll discuss that later. And then lastly, Cassie wears a tie-dye shirt and a tan sweater in the third act, similar to Max's tie-dye shirt from the first film, as well as Allison's sweater. Little costume homages to the original film as well. All right, that is what I got there for trivia. So let's dive in. What did everybody think about Hocus Pocus 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the short 60-second review is that I think the first one's better still. I don't know if any of us would disagree with that. I do find this one really interesting though, because it is definitely not as bad as it could have been. Right? Like nowhere near as bad as a comedy sequel 30 years almost after the original, right? Like those don't have great track records, especially one that doesn't have a theatrical release, right? It's just come to a streaming platform, right? Like this very easily could have been Zoolander 2, right? Or, Dumb and Dumber 2, or any, name a comedy based out of a sequel 20 years later. And it's better than most of those, right? Like, I think they do some weird things. I think they sort of don't understand the three sisters and what made them fun in the first one that much. But I think it's a really fun movie. It feels almost like a Halloween Town movie mashed with Hocus Pocus together, sort of, in ways that I think work and don't work. But I mean, it's definitely fun. It's definitely better than it could have been. And there are like individual performances I really like. Like, I'll get to it, but like, I think Gilbert's character, I could just watch a whole other movie, just him doing shit. Because I think he's really fun. I think the mayor, Tony Hale's great in pretty much anything he's in. And then, I think the three young actresses who kind of form the new, Coven trio, I actually really like their performances across the board for the most part. And if they end up doing like a Hocus Pocus 3 with them as the leads now, that would be interesting. But yeah, it's an interesting movie with moments I definitely don't like and then moments I do like, right, is how I would say.
Cool. Cameron, how about you?
I'm in a lot of the same vein as Logan. I think that this is, if you're a big fan, like for me, Hocus Pocus is what I like to call a certified Abbott family classic. Like this is
same in my family. Yeah,
this is a quintessential like need to watch film if you're going to be part of my family. Hocus Pocus is like, to me, that is like the Halloween movie that I grew up with. I just absolutely adore it and love it. I've seen it, easily more than a dozen times. The thing about this sequel is, one, I think it's 30 years later. Like, let's be real. It's much later. And it is probably the best case scenario of what you could get out of that.
Right.
The thing about the first film is that like the Sanderson sisters were, for lack of a better term, like seriously fucked up. And like, cause they were witches, they straight up were witches. At one point, the dude who's dressed up as Satan, they're like, it's Satan. We worship you, master. Like they definitely play into the witch, like the satanic witch, trope and motif and like all of that, super heavily in the first film. This time around, they do it much less. And I think it's because one, but let's also be very fair, is that times have changed as far as what interpretations and a popular acceptance of what is and could be considered witchcraft. Like this movie came out just like almost 5 to 6 years after the satanic panic in the 80s. Like we are in a different time, and comedy has changed, and like writing has changed. And also like you can't play up Sarah Jessica Parker's Sarah character as the hot bimbo Sanderson sister as much, for multiple reasons. Like it just doesn't work. And a lot of things they did that like pull from the original film, I think work super well. The things that they have adapted to kind of address the change in the times, as well as kind of like additional things like you can't, like we are talking about a sequel 30 years later. What they do to do that, I think, is very smart and very good. But the long and short of it is, I think that it fails to capture kind of the
magic.
Not the magic, but like the actual horror elements. There were horror elements in the original Hocus Pocus. It might not have been a scary film, but there was like at no point in time do the witches get burned in a kiln, or what do they call it? A kiln. Sorry, a kiln. At no point in time the Sanderson sisters get burned to a crisp in a kiln and like murdered by the children, and they think they're like, oh yeah, it's safe. Like things that happened in the first film. They literally light the witches on fire and try to murder them. Justly so. I think that they were very smart about aspects that I really enjoyed. Was the focus was kind of more on the Sanderson sisters this time, and their not their interpersonal relationship, but kind of like their history and like what makes the Sanderson sisters, like what about them makes them important to each other, because it could easily be seen as Bette Midler is just beating up on her two sisters the entire film. But there is a sense of devotion and love and care between the three of them that is especially realized by the end of the film. And is set up. We'll get into
that for sure. We disagree about that, I think, pretty strongly.
That's fair. But there's so much about this that I enjoyed, but I think at the end of the day, this is just an extremely campy movie. And I think that it both benefits and suffers for that. They lean heavily into the camp, and you know what? If you're going to, they own it. They don't shy away from it. They just own it, and for good or bad, that's what we get. So.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think I'm probably the warmest of the three of us on this movie. I enjoyed it. I think it had, and also I will say, like, based on both of your kind of like preambles, this might be like I might be the least devoted to the original. Like, I grew up with the original and enjoyed the original, but it wasn't like we're going to watch Hocus Pocus every Halloween or anything like that.
Right.
In part because Halloween just isn't a holiday I care extremely a ton about.
Y'all, you missed out, Trevor. You missed out in your childhood.
All right.
Any watchings of Hocus Pocus were required.
I will say awesome. I think the reason they lean into the campiness in this is because that's, to Bette Midler's point, that's what most of the audience of this film has leaned into, is the camp, is the drag show kind of aspect that we even get within the film. Yeah. I don't if you were to like poll people on like name 5 scenes you remember from the first movie, I don't think any of them are going to be like the witches burning in the kiln. They're going to they're going to lean into the scenes that kind of get like references and callbacks here, obviously the musical number and stuff like that. And so I think this movie is made for that part of the Hocus Pocus fandom, as well as, kind of modernizing it and bringing it to, when I first watched it, I thought to myself, like, this is a fun throwback to a movie that isn't really made a lot anymore. Like, we don't get these kinds of movies, just like quote, like very loose horror, but like family friendly horror things in general, we don't get a ton of. And so it was like there was like a nice refreshing charm to it in that degree. And I think that it is really bolstered by some really strong performances. I think Tony Hale, like, while I can very much be on like the hit or miss depending on like where he falls with me, and even within this movie he misses a few times, and I'm like, all right, we're doing this laughing bit really, really long time over like 10 whatever blah blah blahs. But there were other moments where I was just like, that is like, he just has such a fun approach to this character.
Yes.
And it was weird because I was, especially the first time around, I kept like waiting for some other shoe to drop of like, oh, it was like he was somehow going to have been cursed back when he was the Reverend, and that was still going to be him all these generations later. It wasn't going to be just the bloodline is strong or whatever. So when that didn't end up happening, I was like, okay, he's just a weird guy that is being played as like the complete opposite of his, forebears kind of thing. That's cute. But yeah, like Sam Richardson as Gilbert, fun and enjoyable every time he's on the screen.
The ascended fanboy aspect of his character is so good.
Yeah. And the dynamic between him and Billy, I think is a ton of fun. I really liked to a lesser extent Cassie, just because she doesn't really come into the story until much later.
Right.
But the Becca and Izzy,
right?
Yeah, like I really enjoyed their dynamic, and I really enjoyed. I thought the writing for them was really clever in a lot of things.
Brilliant. They're very brilliant.
And I think that is where the movie benefits most from, like, hey, we're going to modernize this story to the effect that like lines like, hey, witches are special on their 16th birthday. You know why? Well, I imagine it's because of some patriarchal fear of womanhood and stuff. Like, I loved lines and kind of the deconstruction of those elements, while also like leaning into and having fun with them. The broader element, and I will say, like, yeah, maybe it's not even that I didn't like this element, but it was like rather like they don't want to commit to the Sanderson sisters being villains, and that's set up from that's set up from the off of like, we're going to give the tragic backstory to like make you empathize with these characters, as opposed to in the first movie they were just horrible witches that had no problem cursing and killing daughters and sucking souls of children and stuff like that. This movie is very much about trying to like give them pathos, and if I had to like put my like producer cap on. It's because they're they're turning them from villains into anti-heroes so that in a potential third movie they could come back and combine their forces with this new cohort against the Witch Mother or something like that, who is all powerful and some like that. I don't know if they'll ever go that route, but that's like what this almost feels like, is trying to like ease into, hey, maybe they're not so bad. And to the movies, to the movie's credit, to the movie's credit, Gilbert says like, no, they were just misunderstood for their time, and then he's pretty much immediately proven wrong when they curse him. He's like, but yeah, it is very much like they don't let the Sanderson sisters just still be villains this time around. They do kind of like lean into this like emotional resonance between the sisters, which I think lowers the stakes a little bit. Yeah. But I did enjoy of the Sanderson sisters. I enjoyed the little beats that we get with them. Like I enjoyed the Walgreens sequence as silly as it was, in large part because like I liked them being tricked by like Instagram filters into like using that to trick them into thinking that they really are young and glamorous still. And then like they get, thrown by a mirror, as the security mirror kind of thing. But, and
it
then
makes everybody look ugly.
Yeah. And then I liked the evolution of the let's grab our brooms kind of sequence, which of course in the original we had the broom and then the mop and then the vacuum. Here it is upgraded to the broom, the Swiffer, and the Roombas. And I even like predicted
the Roombas though.
Yeah, I predicted the Roombas like as they're leaving. I'm like, what's the new vacuum going to be? Oh, it's going to be Roombas, isn't it? And then she's like coming out surfing on the Roombas. And yeah, I appreciated that the Roombas came back into play to like sweep up the circle of salt.
Yeah. Great way to throw us off, because we think, oh, idiot mayor, like bumbling mayor is gonna kick the circle or something, but he doesn't. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. And it's like, all right, some competency from adults in this movie. That's good. That's different from the first one.
Yeah.
And then you have like the Roombas come up and you're like, oh my gosh, that's right. The Roombas are possessed and like able to like do their own thing. It's really brilliant. It's really smart.
Yeah. And what's the song? One Way or Another. Like, I enjoyed the sequence in parts. Like, I think the parts that I enjoyed were the parts where it was leaning very heavily on the original. Like, I liked the remix, and when they remixed One Way or Another with like the spell of the original film, like I really enjoyed that moment, and like that song has certainly been stuck in my head for the last week. And then like I enjoyed like the slow trotting of everybody, and ultimately the witches being like, "Why are you all so bad at this?" Blah. And then we also like, I mean, in addition to getting that weird like the movie Hocus Pocus is in canon in this world cameo kind of thing,
right?
The other element that I enjoyed there was like she walks by, and it's not a thing that like the movie is drawing attention to or whatever, but I like that it was a gay couple there watching the movie and just like excited for that. And I was like, cool, good job, Disney. And I enjoyed in the lead up to that all of the other Sanderson sisters, including the over the top drag queens, really like just like I thought they all had great character and fun moments to it. So like overall I enjoy this. I think I'll agree that I think the first one probably is probably a more like overall fun movie, but this certainly this was not like the train wreck it could have been when we get a lot of these legacy sequels all these years later. And I think my biggest issue from just a thematic element is like, I didn't really need to see the Sanderson sisters get like a redemption arc. Like I think they're more fun when they are just eternally the antagonist that you're kind of pushing, or that your heroes are pushing against, and them getting this like tragic ending at the end. It's like, it's the same beat as the first movie, but now you're trying to like make me care a little bit more, and I'm like, I don't necessarily know that I do. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Go ahead, Logan.
Yeah, I've been chomping at the bit. I'm ready for it. Yeah, I mean, I hate it. It's easily the thing that I like the least about the movie. Like it takes it down like a peg at least. Like so much of what makes Hocus Pocus fun, and Cameron seems like the person who like loves that movie in terms of like childhood nostalgia, like I do, is that like they're just unrepentantly evil. Like they're just diabolically, deliciously evil characters, and they just like chew the scenery in Hocus Pocus. And I think they just don't understand that aspect of like what part of it makes Hocus Pocus fun is that they are just cartoon villains, right? Like there isn't any sort of like depth or like, humanity to them really at all. Like they're just, they're cartoon character villains in live action, and they're great. And Bette Midler is just, she's just having a ball just being this character. And here, right from the opening, when they're like little kids and everything, like I don't need to see their tragic backstory. I don't need a Joker moment for this. I didn't need a Joker moment for Joker, to be fair, but I don't need a Joker moment for them. And I don't need all the little beats without that. I don't need the little moment of like, whatever you love the most, you lose kind of thing. And then her just immediately flipping. It wasn't even like her like thinking about it. It's her immediately being like, all right, I'll give up all my like I'm the most powerful being in the world now. I'll give it up. Not her thinking, maybe I can figure something out. Maybe I can devise a plan. Just immediately being like, nope, I'm done. It's just like, all right, like whatever. Like, and to Trevor's point, I didn't even think about this in the moment, but like, it is also the exact same ending from the first one. You're just trying to make it more emotional now, and it doesn't work. And I'm just like, nah, I'd rather just been the first ending and they all die. And it's like, whatever. And like, I like the fact that in the first one, they're sisters, and there's like some sort of like we care about each other, but also it's like much more like, like you guys are idiots, and I kind of hate you in like a loving way, but like I also definitely just hate you kind of thing. And this is like, no, like there's really a bond here, and it's like, I don't know, like I can just have my villains be villains, and that's okay too. Like it, like so much of that of like them trying to just make them be people, I really couldn't stand. And it's such a shame too, because to your point, Trevor, like I think they definitely still have really funny moments, right? Like I think so much of the Walgreens bit is great. I even like the scene of like them in the garage getting trapped with assault, and like her being like, next time when you're trying to bewitch someone, don't tell them you're going to bewitch them before you do it. Like that was such a funny like moment. And like I think the movie actually does a lot of really fun stuff with just like visual gags and that kind of stuff, especially with like the younger actresses. Like they're really great, I think, in that. I can't stand like so many, like we're in this weird moment in film and TV, right, where like people can't just be bad, they have to be like anti-heroes. And like I guess we can blame The Sopranos for this, where like it's influenced 20 years later, but like everyone's got to have a tragic backstory, everyone's got to be like flawed and like just be like have a deeply traumatic or whatever. And it's like, no, like sometimes I just want a really ridiculous villain and I don't need to know anything about it, like, and that's also okay. And like that can make them really fun. And I think it's sort of a shame that we just can't have the Sanderson sisters just be like cartoon villains who are just evil because they're evil people. And they literally eat children. Like that's a whole thing. Like that's how the first movie begins, is they kill a young child and take her soul. Yeah. And they're worshiping Satan. And like here it's like, we'll just eat some like retinol cream instead. And it's like, come on, let them be bad. Let them be bad.
I think that's totally
it was
fine,
them getting tricked, as Becca says.
Still,
like you got tricked by teenagers twice.
That
to me was more like them just being like, in 2022 we can't have them just like be as ready to eat people.
I don't know. I think that a big part of it, I'm not so in hate of that, of the quote unquote redemption arc. I don't feel like it's a redemption arc because I don't feel like it's done that way. I feel like it's a matter of, like, here's the thing. I don't mind the beginning, like the beginning of the movie. I think it's fine showing these like outcast children who have to deal with like this stuff. I think it's fine. I think it sets up like their like their antagonism towards Salem, where it starts. And it starts like being treated unfairly, which is fair. But like where that leads to is inexcusable. Because like the first thing they do when they get power is they literally burn down the dude's house. Like we know that like Billy, like she literally poisons a guy, and I like this tidbit. It's like he's like, I wasn't even her lover. Like,
right, that is an interesting once, like retcon
and
thingy,
like
right?
and then her sister kissed me, and she got angry and she poisoned me and killed me, which I think adds to the quote unquote villainy of the Sanderson sisters. Is like they are very much reactionary on that level, and I think works for them. So like there's things like that like it's like the backstory does work for like the back flashback, set piece, whatever, does work for me on that level of it goes into like a little bit more detail about like, yeah, these weren't really great kids to begin with. They got put in a bad situation and they made the worst out of it. They became children soul eating witches. Right. I think that's totally fine. I think the thing about it though that really keeps them together and keeps kind of like grounds them as like not being just like, cartoon character villains is the care that they have for each other. And I think that was prevalent in the first film. It wasn't, or sorry, not prevalent. I think that was there in the first film, and they just made it more prevalent this time around to kind of like give a reason. Why would she give up all this power? Because she already knows there's no point in living without her sisters. Like at no point does she like it's like it is about like Coventry is about family and and that close bond and relationship and sharing power through that relationship. And so they definitely play into that this time around more. I'm not strictly against it. I don't think that it especially plays well at the end. But I did think that it was like really cool because for me, I didn't notice that that at the beginning, her eyes were purple. The like, Mother Witch. And so, but I realized afterwards when the sisters are disappearing and I realized, oh, she made her promise because she never wanted her to make that same mistake as she. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of felt like there was trying to remember who Bette Midler's Sanderson sister's name is. Winifred. Winifred, I feel is Winnie. Yeah. Her justification and realization and all of that happens at the end, I feel is good. I feel that there was like looking back on it, I'm like, oh, she must have realized this is why I was told not to ever do the spell, because the Mother Witch at the beginning literally tells her like your sisters, like what you guys have is the most important thing that you could have. It's where like your power comes from. It's where everything about what makes you a witch comes from that. And that's important. And for her not to read the warning, leading to like losing all of that, it does make that. And then, anyway, I do think it works. It just doesn't work great. It kind of just passes the threshold for me.
Yeah, I think my biggest issue on that front is that the movie does the movie tells you that Winnie loves her sisters. It doesn't show you that Winnie loves her sisters. Like,
well, because she's an evil witch.
Her across both movies, Mary and Sarah are much more devoted to Winnie than Winnie is to them. Like Winnie is just abusive to both of them throughout both movies. Right. That's like the dynamic that they have. So even in the flashback, she's not supporting them until they're basically like threatened to be ripped away from her. That's like the one little bit that we get that like shows she actually cares about them. Until we get to like they're gone, and now she suddenly has the face turn. As my note is Winifred face turn at the end to be with her sisters. I think the movie doesn't earn it as much as it could have.
I think that's fair.
I think that's fair. To that point to me too, like one of the things that the movie does that is interesting that it like does a half step towards, but then immediately backs off of in the same like 30-second span is whenever the other two sisters get powers, right? And Sarah Jessica Parker's character immediately stands up for herself. And it's like, oh, this is an interesting dynamic. Are they going to have like a falling out here? And then she immediately gets put back in her place and it's done. It's like, oh, okay, that's just like a weird why even have that like 10-second scene then? Like that was such a random moment. Like I would have found it way more interesting if like she had set up for herself, they'd had like a falling out, they'd all gone on their own thing, and then like because of that, like she loses him that way, and then decides to like go, like that'd have been way more compelling than her just like immediately slaps her back down and is like, yeah, I am the boss here, I'm in charge. This is not a like, you know, equal relationship kind of thing. And it's like, all right, so I just don't believe that what I've seen, like Troy said, over the 2 films, Winnie's gonna give up all this power she just got. I think they're telling me that, but I haven't seen anything to indicate she's going to give up that much power for her 2 sisters. And that's my issue.
There's 2 things. One, I think that, oh, what the heck? I'm like totally out of focus. Okay. One part of that is I think that that scene is done to establish that it's not like Winifred doesn't keep the sisters in line because she's more powerful than them. It is an actual interpersonal dynamic that they have. The second thing is, I think that it is like the kind of the setup for that is, I think there are moments in both films where the point for them is not, oh, she wants to become all powerful. It's the point was the 3 of them wanted to continue living forever. It wasn't about power, it's about longevity and getting revenge, basically. And so I can see why they do this whole thing where it's like you lose the things that are important to you as you gain the more power. I don't think it was the most necessary like plot thread to go through with it, but for me, it definitely crosses that threshold. Like it's high enough that it crosses it over it without a problem for me. It's just it's not, like Trevor said, it's not it's earned in a way, but it's not very well earned.
Any favorite moments or least favorite moments anybody wants to chime in with that we haven't already discussed?
One thing that I like about this movie and these kinds of movies, like you talked a little bit about earlier, Trevor, is weirdly enough, just like the vibe of the city itself, right? Like, I think part of what I like about Halloween, the Halloween movies I watch, which are not scary Halloween movies, is just like the like autumnal, like fall setting, like, you know, everyone wearing these kind of outfits and like the cool shots you can get around like these old New England towns kind of thing. And I love some of the shots in the first movie. I like the fact when they go into the school at the beginning of this movie and just like, oh yeah, this feels like a random school I could have gone to in the fall, and everyone's wearing the outfits. And like, granted, a like particularly festive school. Like, I don't think I ever had a high school that had that many people dressing up for Halloween, but still like everything else is like, oh yeah, this is just a regular high school. And like, I like that vibe. And Hocus Pocus is like a B cult film, right? And those movies don't really exist in any way anymore. Like, we've just kind of squeezed out that market in a lot of ways. And this is sort of a B cult film kind of vibe to it for most of the part of it. Like, maybe one that's a bit more like Disney Channel, but still like it's a B movie. And I sort of like that vibe and energy to it. And I sort of wish more of those movies existed nowadays, because we're all essentially the same like age bracket. And we grew up with a lot of B movies and C movies, both on Disney Channel, but also just in movie theaters in general, right? Like, not everything had to be a giant box office success to exist. And I kind of like those movies a lot. I have a soft spot for them in my heart. I have a soft spot for B movie games, I guess, too. And like, they also increasingly don't really exist. And so like, I enjoy just like the vibe of this movie being never really that serious, even though like, theoretically, when Winnie would get all the power, she'd be able to just like destroy the world or whatever. And like, they never really mention that. It's just like, oh yeah, like she can just be all powerful, but like, don't really worry about it. And like, I like the fact that this is just like a low stakes movie and it's just sort of chill and you're just having a good time throughout the whole thing. And like, the dance number is definitely a thing that exists. Like, I definitely agree that the best part of it is when they mix in like the spell from the first movie. I think part of the issue is that the lip syncing / dubbing for the music number for like not Barbra Streisand, for Bette Midler and company was like it just felt like it was always off by like half a second. And I was like, oh, this is definitely like not as well synced as the first one, I think. But even that was fun, right? And I liked a lot of the just interactions they had at the carnival itself. I thought were really fun, right? Like, I'm a sucker for people being in the wrong time and place and just reacting with bewilderment at things, whether it's just like a Walgreens store trip or whether it's like poison apples. You can't tell people they're poison. No one's ever going to take one from you. To like everything in between. Like, I like those kind of stories. I think they're pretty much always funny. And so like, I think the carnival sequence is like a real highlight. And I also like the fact that the mayor is just like, yeah, genuinely nice dude. They set you up for him to be a bad guy, where like one of the girls mentions like, oh, like he's just like the nicest dude ever. And like your antenna after watching movies is like, oh, he's a bad guy, obviously. And the fact that no, he's just a nice dude. He's just a good dad who doesn't want his daughter to have a party. And it's like, yeah, those are understandable dad emotions. And the fact that like Cameron said, he isn't incompetent. He doesn't shake their hand. He doesn't break the like salt field. He just gets mad, buys a shitty Walgreens caramel apple, and goes to bed.
His caramel apple.
Yeah.
That bit great. Was, I think only Tony Hale could make me like that bit. Like it takes a particular kind of actor to make that bit work.
On the carnival, I want to shout out the world's most violent version of bobbing for apples.
Yes,
with like the person just like holding the heads down,
shoving your head.
And I will say, like, I thought if they wanted to do this, I'm glad they ultimately didn't. But like, especially because I don't think unless like you knew and they spent like a lot of time really like explaining it, it wouldn't have come across. But I think it would have been funny if the two people who were like had their heads dunked were the two dumb teens from the first movie, Ice and whatever.
Cool. Ice and Jay.
But like ultimately, like I think they would have needed to do way too much legwork to make that apparent that that's who that was. So I'm glad they didn't. So instead, it's just like somebody is violently trying to drown these people under the visage of we're bobbing for apples.
Bobbing for apples.
So I like that. I will say, like on the weaker side of things, where I'm like, this didn't work for me. I don't know why this was a thing. And then it came back in like the credits was the Witches Are Back song. I was like, what?
Yeah,
what is this? Why are they just
that.
singing to nobody in the woods?
It was
super weird. Yeah,
they're breaking the fourth wall kind of thing. It was like that's a weird choice. And so I appreciate the movie even calls out like, who are they singing to? And then Kathy and Jimmy comes in and is like, you.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, that's still a weird thing to have been doing, and also completely anathema to you guys are child sucking thing. Like, how is that? Yeah, it was a weird choice, but it was a choice of like.
Well, also
Bette Midler probably wrote into her script that she wanted two songs.
Yeah.
Why did Gilbert say, "Oh yeah, no, they sing. That's a thing they do"? It's like they did that in one scene, and you weren't there for that. You were a child.
Yeah, there is like I didn't draw on it, but there was like another trivia thing of like. Gilbert couldn't have been, like that young child in the first movie because all of the children in town were under the bewitching spell in the first movie. So it's like,
oh right,
so there is like a plot hole kind of thing on that front. But I was like, whatever, I don't care.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
he rolled high on his DC save.
Sure,
that's
there you
go.
I will say we haven't really talked about it yet, but one thing that I was a little bummed out to see, sort of talking about Ice and Jay, is the fact that we didn't have any of the original three characters even have like a cameo appearance at all. Was sort of just like, I would have loved to see just like one of, or really I would have loved to see all of them there, but just like any of them in like some sort of like cameo role, like, oh, they're the mayor of the city instead of like the random dude, or like, oh, they're like one of the high school teachers or whatever, like just like they're like. I think would have been a cool moment, and it would have like because Gilbert is supposed to be sort of like a stand-in to like thread the original movie to this one, but it's like we didn't know Gilbert at all, and so it doesn't have quite the same emotional effect as like if the store owner of the haunted house store was one of those 3 kids from the original one.
The thing is, Max's actor no longer acts.
Right. And they're again, that's the thing, like, they're like logistical reasons, but it is just like, that sucks. Like, I would have wanted at least, like, if not the same actor, like the character to like pop back in and be like, here is that thread.
Yeah, I think like with Ice and Jay, I think the problem with a movie 30 years apart and taking high school or middle school age actors from 30 years ago to now, wildly different physicality. So like, even if they pop in, are you going to recognize that that's that character? Maybe with Thor Birch, you make it like a moment.
Like, I think if the movie if the movie makes it a moment, yeah, you recognize it. Or again, like, that's the thing, like, if Max is a shop owner, it's like, 30 years ago, this was me kind of thing. And he like reveals that backstory.
I mean, I'll just shout out the funeral scene in Endgame where the kid from Iron Man 3 popped up and everybody's like, who the hell's that guy? So, and that was, like 8 years apart or something like that. So
yeah, it's not, I don't think,
but again, that's the whole point. Like, they didn't like make any sort of reference to who it was. They were just like a kid in the back versus like, I am Max. I defeated them 30 years ago. Here's how you can do it kind of thing, right? Like, you like make it like a thing.
Yeah.
I think, but my problem with that is I feel like that might just end up feeling forced at that point. Like, the way they did it, I feel like, so they didn't have any of the original actors. Cool. I'm good with that. There was nobody who came in. There was no campy, like, oh, remember me when I was in this movie 30 years ago?
I don't know. The movie had enough camp that I think it could have felt like, I feel like it could have had the camp to have,
I think that would have been just camp overload. I just don't think it would have worked. And I think that they made the right choice by just being like, hey, didn't end up working out getting Danny back, Thor Birch back for this, so let's just like not worry about it.
I think they could have made it work, but I think it was more logistically than anything that they didn't, and so ultimately it didn't bother me. I appreciated that it kind of let the new cohort really stand on its own, and we still got 4 of the legacy characters from the original that came back. One.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah. I was gonna say one more thing I wanted to shout out. I want to share disappointment in the introduction and then just complete lack of payoff of Glenn, the weird vampire kid in the opening class sequence. I was like,
he has a dance sequence like in the call for the party. He's like busting a move and they're like, go Glenn, like it's a big thing in the background. When Cassie's like has the phone and she's like hello, are you there? Like, she can't see him because of the curse.
Okay,
in the background, Glenn is busting a move, and everybody's like going, "Go Glenn, go Glenn!"
So the fact that I think you could be just completely bullshitting me right now—that's
the problem.
Just
I can't tell.
Indicates how little of an actual payoff Glenn gets. But I did want to give a shout out to I really enjoyed just the revelation that Mike has of like, I wasn't making fun of you. What do you think it is when you talk about how weird people are? He's like, oh my God, I have so many people to apologize to.
Mike's like, am I the bad guy this whole time?
The fact that he was always like he's a
himbo,
golden retriever boyfriend.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, do they really have an issue? Like, is there really an issue with it's Mike and his friends? And it's like, oh yeah, because Mike and his friends like call them weird and witches and stuff and make fun of them. And it's like, no, it's just Mike is just like an idiot and just doesn't get that he's
an oblivious idiot.
He doesn't get that.
Yeah.
And it's
to
like,
be
okay,
fair to Mike and his friends though, she is actually literally a witch though.
True.
Yeah. Like 100. Like, here's the thing. He's like, you have crystals and you do spells and stuff. And it's like, yeah, but you're calling us like witches. It's like, but you are, like, you do witch stuff. Like, that's witch stuff, right? And it's like, but it makes us feel bad. And it's like, oh, it makes you feel bad. I get it. I'm sorry. Like, that's a good moment. I enjoy that. Because it also like totally deconstructs oh, she has a dick boyfriend, or she has her boyfriend's who's popular, but he's a douchebag. It's like, no, he's genuinely nice. Also very easy to scare.
Mm-hmm.
Very easy to scare.
Yeah.
And like, it's like, well, why doesn't he help them in the end? Because he literally passes out from fear from seeing in a real actual zombie.
Mm-hmm. A headless zombie.
Like,
yes.
Totally fair. Like, you know what? Mike, you take this one out. You're good, man. You're like, your character arc has come full swing. You're good.
Mm-hmm. Any other moments to shout out or or lambast?
Oh yes. Oh, so one of the things I wanted to say that was one of my favorite things was the three girls, the new coven, the friends, and really all the teen actors. I was just really impressed by just like how just like good everything was, whether it was the dialogue, the delivery. Cassie, I think, is the weakest of the three because she gets the least screen time.
Right.
But I never felt like she was not part of that trio. Like they did a great job of being like, there's some distance, there's some problems, but they're still all friends. Especially when Izzy says, "Oh, my mom has missed you," and she goes, "Oh my God, Susan," and it's like that callback to at the beginning of the film when what's her name, the main girl,
Becca.
When Becca says the same thing, like, "Oh my God, I love Susan." It's like, oh, yep, that like good callbacks, good like catching her up to speed on things. Does a very good job.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to her being the zombie referee to her zombie football boyfriend. Great costumes overall. And shout out to Vampire Glenn. Busted a move, man. Owning that scene.
If you say so. Yeah, I think it was just
this is where you're gonna this is the lightsaber like thing happening again, combat style thing happening again. And you're going to look it up, or you're going to go back and watch, and you're going to see that I'm right.
I mean, sure, I'll go watch it won't take me that long to watch a 10-second scene or whatever and see if Glenn's actually busting a move. But it's still like, even if that is the payoff, it's a background gag. For the like foreground setup that he was given, I don't think I would have liked to have seen more
his
from
foreground
Glenn.
setup that was like, oh yeah, that's the biggest loser in school, and we're inviting him too.
Yeah,
it's 2 seconds.
Yeah,
it doesn't need a big payoff. The background payoff, I think, is enough.
Yeah, I think they do a really good job with the efficiency of storytelling in establishing that like this trio was a trio, but within the last few months, like right from the off, you get that there's distance, that there's like there's been a schism there, and yeah, I think they do that like with only a few lines of dialogue, they do a pretty good job of like giving you, here's all the history you really need to know about these characters. Logan, anything else from you?
No, I mean, I definitely agree that really all of the teen actors are great. And, child and teen acting is a bit of a knife's edge at times. And I think that they totally nailed it with the casting of all of them. Even Cassie, who, gets, I think, the least to do, even kind of like her boyfriend gets like more like moments in some ways. I still think is good and, does what she's supposed to do really well. And so I would definitely commend it. They are probably the strongest piece of the movie in some ways because I have to kind of form, the straight man to the more outlandish, Sanderson sisters, and because they have to kind of be the emotional heart in a lot of ways. And I think they absolutely nail it.
Yeah. Also, amazing transition to catch Cassie up to speed and get her to believe it is her just seeing them on their like flying through the air.
Yeah.
Like,
so you saw they're flying. We don't need to explain that. Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of the child actors, I do want to, like, while I love the modern day child actors, the young versions of the Sanderson sisters, I was like, I appreciate what you're all doing.
Yeah.
But you're all so over the top that it's not working for me. of the young,
accurate.
The youngins.
That had child theater actors written all over it.
Yeah. I think they did what was asked of them and what they were directed to. And I think it's just like, it's really easy for adult actors to get away with like grandiose over the top stuff, and not be like, all right, that's overacting. But when it's kids, it's like, all right, you're already a little bit more inclined to overact anyway. And when you're overacting, just doing caricatures of already overacted performances, it's like, this is a little not like, I think a little could have done a lot more in some of those sequences, but it was what it was. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the report card there, where we grade from A+ to F. What does everybody want to give Hocus Pocus 2? Cam, as the Hocus Pocus super fan, I'll throw it to you first. What do you want to give Hocus Pocus 2?
It's got a B- for me. I was wavering between a C+ and a B-. But I think it crosses that threshold enough for me, like that kind of like that hurdle gets crossed over enough. There's not as much fumbling that it could have, like, that those really awkward bad moments could have had. They don't dwell on it. It's not overly done. The only thing that lasts pretty long is that laughing bit, but that's really it. Like, everything else, if it doesn't work, doesn't matter. They're just going to move on from it. And it works because of that. So yeah, I think that it's a solid B-. I think that it's like, it's obviously not trash. It's still like a good film, but it just doesn't reach the heights that I think the original sets the bar for. It doesn't necessarily reach all of those. So
cool. Logan, how about you?
I think Cameron's gonna like the movie the least. I mean, I would probably give it a B, right? Like, because I think, like I said at the very beginning of the show, despite the fact that I don't like what they do with the sisters in terms of just making them not villains, and they're probably a little bit more, buffoonish at times in this one than they are in the first one. I just sort of think it, like, so much of the other parts of the movie work really well, right? Like, I think it is, yeah, I mean, like, it is a Disney Channel version of the first movie in some ways. And so they sanded off a lot of the rougher edges, and there aren't people getting burned alive and, a, like, stove, and they aren't eating kids and that kind of stuff. But, like, it's just still charming, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, Hocus Pocus is just a charming movie. And I think the young actors really help with that, and really carry this movie. And I think the sisters, despite not being cartoon villains, are still, three very talented actresses, right? And so they definitely do their part and have a lot of fun with it. And they give you these kind of breadcrumbs of fan servicey moments. I think Gilbert's great. I think the mayor's great. It's great to have Billy and his, headless body wandering around again. And so, like, yeah, I would probably go somewhere between a B- and a B, but, for nostalgia's sake, I'll give it a B and say, like, I had a really good time. And for what it's worth, Shravia had an even better time with this than I did. She really enjoyed it, and also got, like, teary-eyed at the end when the sisters were all even. So it apparently worked for her as someone who is not a, diehard fan of the original. It did exactly what it wants to for that kind of viewer.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say, like, I will say, I think teared up a little bit the first time, even though, like, I knew that it is purely manipulating me to get me to tear up.
Sure, that works though.
Yeah, it still worked, and I was like, all right, like, it doesn't earn it, and like, mentally and like, in my mind, everything is screaming, it's not earning this. What are you doing, Trevor?
Right.
But it still, it still draws water to the eyes and stuff. Yeah, I think I think as I assumed, I'm probably at a B+, and I think it very easily could have been an A if the first 10 minutes of this movie wasn't in this movie, and if they hadn't tried to really, like,
it would definitely help.
If they hadn't tried to empathize and like, make the Sanderson sisters, like, characters you're rooting for or something like that. Right. So yeah, it's B+ for me. Could have been A-, but so be it.
I will say this, that, like I said at the very beginning too, I think, all of us gave this movie at somewhere in the B range, which I just have to reiterate, it is a testament to a movie coming out 30 years after the original. It's like true, like, in terms of, like, legacy sequels, this is definitely in the top tier. Like, as someone who saw Zoolander 2 in a movie theater with, like, 3 other human beings, this is, a night and day kind of difference between that.
Indeed. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this, of course, you have the original Hocus Pocus. You have the Hocus Pocus 25th Anniversary Halloween Bash. You have Halloween Town.
Go watch it.
The Nightmare Before Christmas. The Haunted Mansion. Just Beyond. Okay. I don't know what that one is about. Under Wraps 2. And don't worry, Under Wraps fans, if you're like, why did they put Under Wraps 2 on there and not Under Wraps? Under Wraps is the last of the options that they give you.
So, I didn't know they did a sequel.
Yeah, apparently they did.
Under Wraps was a pretty good Disney original movie.
That was
yeah,
like,
I would stand by that. Yeah,
was that one of the original Disney Channel original movies? I think that's pre-Brink, right? It was basically like
it's post Brink, I think. Brink was like
Under
the
Wraps
summer
is
film,
too-
and I believe Under Wraps was the I think they came out the same year, but I think Brink was summer, Under Wraps was fall, like in Halloween.
Under Wraps was 97, October of 97.
Yeah, I'm pulling up. I have my Wikipedia list of. Oh, where is it?
It is named
Disney Channel
according
original
to
movies.
Wikipedia. It is the first Disney Channel original movie.
There you go. Yeah.
The very first
yep,
one.
Yep. Yeah, Brink was 1998. Yes,
Okay,
it
so it
was.
came out
So
after.
yes, Under Wraps, because you had stuff like Susie Q and that like earlier
Right.
era of Disney Channel. Premiere films is what those were called. The first that had the Disney Channel original movie
Oh.
branding was Under Wraps.
This
Great film.
is like a weird non sequitur, but the mummy from Under Wraps is Marshall's dad from How Much Mother and the voice of Patrick Star.
Yeah.
Oh.
I did not know that.
Yeah, guy from Coach is what I always remember him as because my
Oh,
dad
that's
was
right.
a,
Yeah,
my dad was a big
That was
fan of
mine too.
Coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Coach too.
Coach was like always on. I never understood the appeal of it. But it had like notable actors. So
Yeah.
Where it was? When did
Check
Under Wraps 2 come out? When was that a thing?
can't.
Yeah, I don't know
can't
about that. I
imagine.
never knew that existed.
It was a dark time.
Oh, Under Wraps 2 came out like 2 weeks ago, September 25th. It is brand new.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I feel better
That
then.
explains why none of us knew this thing. It's another super belated legacy sequel. Apparently, we'll have to add the Under Wraps series into our Halloween marathons in future years of that D Plus show. Extracurriculars.
Fun note: Under Wraps has a throwaway line where somebody says they sleep naked, and that was the first time I learned that people slept without clothes on.
All right.
Oh.
Extracurriculars. What else are you watching on Disney Plus? Anybody watching anything else? Your Andors, your She-Hulks?
Andor She-Hulk.
Yeah, and or She-Hulk.
Yep. Same. And did I watch anything else? I feel like I watched something else. Oh, yeah, Werewolf by Night. But we will talk about that next week.
Excited.
Andor, She-Hulk, Andor. We're in the middle episode of seemingly this like second 3-episode arc. So enjoying that. And then She-Hulk. We finally had our spoilers for She-Hulk's episode
She-Hulk.
8. We had our Daredevil return
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh well, sorry. In a very
It's
fun
okay.
episode.
It's all over the internet. It's all over Twitter. Yeah.
Twitter already spoiled it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
was gonna say.
Disney Plus, like they were advertising that this is the episode he's in any of their
How
stuff.
many episodes of She-Hulk are there going to be again?
9. There's one more.
There's one more. Okay.
This episode even calls it like Jen has like a fourth wall break of like, oh shoot, is next week the finale? So yes, we will be back next week with MCU's Werewolf by Night. So stay tuned for that as well. And that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you everybody for joining me to talk about Hocus Pocus 2. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, massive shout out to what we have coming up. So for anybody who doesn't know, November 1st is That Nerdy Site Day, which is our birthday. It's also my birthday.
I always forget that it's the same birthday.
Yeah, it's also the anniversary of like the day that I came out publicly. Like lots of things happened on
I knew
November
that.
1st.
That's why I remember it is because we were all around couch, save Cameron in Texas, and like announcing and celebrating. And Cameron had this like very heartfelt like here's a post about me kind of post as well. I was like, all right.
Yep. So look forward to some like restructuring announcement sorts of things that we have coming up. It's very exciting.
Cool. You can follow Logan at Lefty Logie with 2 G's. Anything you want to give a shout out to, Logan?
I'll echo that. Go check out That Nerd Site Show. Go check out all the Let's Plays going live Tuesdays and Thursdays. Yeah, no longer Fridays for the moment. And yeah, go be excited for November 1st. We'll turn 3 years old. Yeah, that's right. And
yes, 3 years old, starting our 4th year.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was like, where are we at? Yeah, lots of good stuff here. And also just be excited for, like we said, we've already pretty much mapped out the next 2 months of D+, and December will be easy to map out as well because there's going to be a bunch of Christmas movies. So we pretty much have the next 3 months, for the most part, mapped out already. So It is an exciting time for D Plus as well, so stay tuned for the rest of this month and a Halloween extravaganza we got here.
Indeed. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. In addition to the rest of Halloween month here of that D Plus show, I will shout out the Let's Plays. Especially this week, had a couple bonus Let's Plays in addition to my current Skyrim saga. Because Steam has the Next Fest going on right now. So I checked out a couple demos, including Season, which a couple of our team members had really loved back at PAX East a couple years ago. Checked out the demo of that, as well as Lego Brick Tales, which is a game I was already planning on checking out next week. And this basically just cemented it. So go check out all that
Seasons
fun stuff.
was PAX East 2020, wasn't it?
Yep.
God.
Yep.
Feels like a
do we
lifetime
even have a release
ago.
date? Do we even have like a window? It's just like 2023.
It's I think spring 2023 is basically what they're aiming
That's
for.
crazy.
Early
It's been
2023
so
is what the like when you finish the demo, that's what it says. Like,
Right.
hey, we hope you enjoy early next year. Yeah, you can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. If you liked what you heard, please, once again, like, rate, review, share, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.